Good morning. I'm Dr. Mehboob Ahmed, Assistant Professor, Amity Institute of Clinical Psychology, Amity University, Haryana. Today, we have organized a program on World Disability Day at Citizen Hospital, Gurugram, Haryana. This day, Disability Day, this is organized every year by different departments, by different institutes, by different universities. In fact, we are also conducting each year. And every year there are certain changes, there are certain improvements, there are certain additions which are taking place. And so we are also. This year, the theme of the Disability Day, that is a transformative solution for inclusion, development, the role of innovations in fueling an accessible and equitable world. So, this was the theme which has been introduced for this year. As you can understand by the term itself that the purpose that is to make the society more equitable. The disadvantaged section which has been since long, the purpose is to broaden it up to the equitable level. Before I move ahead, let me just throw upon some light over the history of this particular day. In 1976, United Nations Assembly proclaimed 1981 as the International Year of Disabled Person. So, if you look into the history, so the starting that was 1976 and 1981 that was proclaimed as the International Year for Disabled. After that, US President at the time, Ronald Reagan, he facilitated the program, the day, and again 1983 to 1992 that was declared as the Decade for Disabled. So you can see that the effort that has been put since long to increase the efforts toward the upliftment for the status of the disabled. Initially, let me tell you that the disabled, it was understood in initial definitions that those who have lost the abilities, they are the disabled. And it was understood that they can't do anything or they have lost the capacity. But American Medical Association in the beginning of 2000 said it is not the loss but it is the alteration in the abilities. So they came up with a new addition. It is not the loss, rather it is the alteration in the abilities. So you could see that the changes they were taking place. So in order to facilitate the changes, we are assembled here to fasten that movement for the upliftment of the status of the disabled. If you could see the disabilities, there are various types of the disabilities. Initially, blindness, deafness, loss of limb. But subsequently, there were certain disabilities which were also added in the list of the disabled. There are two very important things which I would like to hear at this juncture, and that is when we talk about the disabilities, when we call as the disabilities, that one is the environmental disability. Fine. Another, that is the attitudinal disability. Environmental is that for example, that there is a hospital or there is a university and the classes of the student that is to be taken, for example, at the 6th floor. Fine. And when any disabled person wants to take the admission, he cannot take the admission because there is no ramp. Fine. So that is the environmental disability, that the person could not get the education because the environment is not facilitated. But that can be overcome. The more important, that is the attitudinal. That, for example, the head of the department of that institute says that because this is a disabled person and he is not the right person on whom we should devote our energy or waste our energy. He cannot learn or she cannot learn because of the disability. And this attitudinal deficit you will find to a great extent in the society, and which is very problematic. So there is a need, a strong need to work upon that. There are many aspects which need to be covered, and that is to be covered by the trainees one by one. So we are assembled here to think over the matter and to chalk out certain strategies and how we can proceed to improve upon the disability. Before I invite the trainees, I'll just give one example, one live example. That before some time, it was in 2018, I attended a conference, that was the CRE conference in Evas. So there was a gentleman who was among the panelists and whose both legs were not functioning. So after the session was over, I interacted with him. During his address, I came to know that he participated in the Olympiad and other reputed competitions and was working at the very prime post in Delhi itself. So when I interacted, then he said that you would be surprised to know that I drive my own car, Honda City. I was totally surprised that, sir, how can you drive? Can you please share with me then how you drive your Honda City? Then he explained that I took the help of the mechanical engineer, and with his help, I got the gear in my hands and other, the technical things. He transformed those things into my hands, and through my hands, I could operate the brakes, I could operate the gear, and now I can drive Honda City throughout the city. Then he said that it is the determination, it is your will, which pushes you, which motivates you to work. Then he gave his life history also, that how he got the education from a rural place in the city, and then how he moved forward in the life. So the point is that the ability, the capacity, you will have to explore. Fine. There are numerous examples. There are many Olympians. Fine. They got the disability, but they did not consider that disability as something which could stop them. Rather, they in that same event they got the gold medal. So the history is full of that. So there are many things which I would request the other those who are present had to share. So in this line, the first presenter, that is, please come, please, Priya.
Good morning everyone, my name is Priya. I am a trainee of MPhil Clinical Psychology at Amity Institute of Clinical Psychology, Amity University, Haryana. Today what I am presenting is an overview of disability. So like Sir mentioned, disability is an evolving concept. The World Health Organization currently defines disability as an umbrella term for impairments, activity limitation and participation restriction. So if you understand, there are three essential components of this definition, which is impairments, which refers to problem in body functions or alteration in body structure. For example, blindness, paralysis. The second is activity limitation, which refers to a difficulty in executing activities, for example, walking and eating. The third one is participation restriction, which refers to problem with involvement in any area of life, for example, facing discrimination in employment or transportation. This definition stresses that disability results from interaction between a person with impairment and attitudinal and environmental barriers that hinders full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with other individuals in the society. Defining disability as an interaction means that the disability is not an attribute or a characteristic of one person, rather based on an interaction between the person and environment. Thus, there is a need for progress in, progresses that can be made in social participation that can address the barriers that hinder persons with disability in day-to-day activities. Another important definition that is to be understood is from the act that has been recently given in India, that is the Right of Persons with Disability Act, which came in 2016. Persons with disability have been defined as a person with long-term physical, mental, intellectual or sensory impairment, which is an interaction with barriers that hinder his full or effective participation in society equally with others. In this act, there have been 21 disabilities that are covered. For example, blindness, low vision, hearing impairments, dwarfism, intellectual disability, autism spectrum disorder, mental illness, cerebral palsy, and various others. To understand that there are about 2.2% of Indian population that come under this category. Thus, there is a need to make efforts in the direction which will help us reduce these barriers and facilitate these people with disability. Thank
you. A very good morning to everybody present here. My name is Jyotika Chopra and I am an MPhil trainee in clinical psychology in year 1, currently at Amity University, Haryana in the AICP department. Today I will be covering the models of disability. I will be covering the medical model, the human rights model and the social model. So firstly I'll start off with the medical model. So here impairment is seen as the consequence of some sort of deviation from a normal body functioning. And this causes undesirable effects on the affected individual. So here, disability is seen as an impairment which is resulting because of a physical abnormality in the individual. And medical treatment, wherever possible, should be directed so as to correct this underlying pathology. So management of disability, according to the medical model, is aimed at curing some individual maladjustment, which could be through behavioral change or some medical surgeries. So their aim is ultimately to lead towards a cure. Now this model suffers from a lot of criticism. Number one, it reduces a person's impairment to just a biological disturbance. And disability is seen as a deficit and something that has to be cured or resolved within a person. And this also doesn't view disabilities from a mental health perspective. Here the focus is only on physical impairment. Second is the human rights model. Here, disability is seen as a protected characteristic against which discrimination, harassment and victimization is absolutely illegal. So 1980s was the year where emergence of disability came about as a global issue. 1981 was regarded as the International Year of the Disabled Person. So disability, according to the human rights model, is a social political construct with a rights-based dialogue. Here, the emphasis is shifted from dependence to an independence model, and a person with disability is thought to have a political voice in the society and one that can lead to a social change. This model focuses on inclusivity promotion. And even India has an RPW Act, which is Rights for Persons with Disability Act, which came in force from April 2017. An overview of the Act is that the government shall ensure that persons with disability enjoy the right to equality, life with dignity, respect for their own integrity, and equality with other people. Lastly, I'll be covering the social model. So, according to the social model, disability is seen as a form of a social oppression, which is generated by barriers that are present in everybody's environment. So here, they want to put the person with disability in control of their own lives. Their premise is that people's experiences of exclusion are used to enable them to make a connection between removing the barriers that they face in the society and fight for their own justice and equality as a whole. So to conclude with, in the social model, disability is seen as a social construct, which means that society itself is creating barriers which favors the able-bodied people and discriminates against the minority, which is disabled. Thank you. That is all from my side. I'd like to call the next speaker.
Good afternoon, present everyone. I'm Shifali. I'm a clinical psychology trainee at Amity Institute of Clinical Psychology, Amity University, Haryana, Pathan. My topic here that I'm presenting is about unemployment and disability. So I would like to start with the numbers for sure that India's unemployment rate has been historically high and is now predicted to rise even 4 times by 2023. And I'll not go in depth of the numbers exactly for the whole of the population, but I would really like to reflect that in India currently there are approximate 3.5 crore people with PWD, out of which 1.3 crore is employable, but only 34 lakh of them are employed. There are very less companies or corporates taking initiative as a part of CSR, the corporate social responsibility, to help the disabled also in the area of employment. The barriers for the same include, first of all, the lack of education and training and lack of financial resources. Secondly, the nature of the workplace or occupation and the perception of the employers about the disabled people or the people with disability. There are evidences wherein people are given incentives to make the people with disability leave their jobs and use the other availability of disability benefits from the government. Then there are many anecdotal incidences which also shows us the negative attitude towards the employees with disability inside the companies, inside the corporates. Now, due to all of this, there is also one reason that comes up from within them, within the PWD, that they shy away from applying for certain jobs. And because of that, the shyness comes in, the embarrassment comes in, and even if they are in the profession, there are possibilities that they are unable to complete their tasks given to them. So the whole of this vicious cycle is creating a lost opportunities effect a term that is coined by Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The term is the lost opportunities as well. Besides this, the families and the parents of the disabled people are also very protective of them and are trying to provide them an environment which is making them dependent more compared to being independent. And that is why they are not even exposed to the world outside. These are few of the many reasons that can be involved in the barriers that we were talking about in terms of employability. Now I would like to tell you about the companies that are taking initiative as a part of CSR. First of all is Reliance. Reliance is doing an amazing job. They are opening many outlets wherein they give the simpler jobs. For example, just putting the grocery in the bag can be done with one hand. So why don't we give that position? They are reserving the quota for such people to actually apply there. Then IHCL Taj. In hotel companies, what do we need? The world needs privacy sometimes. There are business meetings happening, there are so many important things happening, functions happening, and people try to replicate their finest of the memories in good hotels and everything. So they require a staff which is doing their work and not also burdening their conversations or breaking the confidentiality. So again, one more reason for Taj to keep people who have disabilities or hard of hearing. Then Infosys and Microsoft companies, because however disabled you are, you can actually find one ability that can empower you. And we have seen in multiple researches as well that people who have lost their limbs or are unable to do the physical activity have a stronger mental ability. And in tech companies, it is being occupied very well. Then I'll name two particular second-tier companies which are H&M. H&M is using this CSR in the area of disability factors and many others. And the last one is restaurant chains. One example is Soda Bottle Opener Wala, if you have heard of the name. In every branch of this restaurant, you will find 50% of the staff who is either hard of hearing or not able to speak, but still can take and live happily after that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone present here. I am Muskan Marwa. I am an MPhil clinical trainee in Amity University of Clinical Psychology, Amity University, Haryana. I am going to present on the topic disabled during COVID-19. So, according to the official estimates, 3.2% of the Indian population is disabled, and according to WHO estimate, 15% of the world's population is disabled. So people with disabilities also have the standard healthcare needs like anyone else, and they have been they faced a lot of difficulties during the pandemic time. So one of them is that like certain disabilities, they have underlying health conditions, like they are susceptible to secondary conditions or comorbidities like lung problems, diabetes, obesities, or heart diseases, which increases due to the severity of the symptoms if they contract COVID. And also, people with disabilities are more likely to experience increased unmet health needs due to factors such as inaccessible facilities, financial barriers, lack of accessible transport during the pandemic time. Also, some of the disabilities, people living in institute also have increased risk of contracting and dying from COVID-19 due to not having proper isolation in the institute. There were certain measures that were taken to stop the spread of virus, such as social distancing, which were not implemented on the people with disabilities due to the reliance on personal contact for support and inaccessibility of vital public health information. For example, the Arogya Setu app that is not accessible to people with visual disabilities. Also, there was a research that suggested that people with disability during the pandemic time were at heightened risk of poverty due to unemployment, which they faced due to discrimination or stigma, and also due to low access to social support and rehabilitation service during the pandemic. Thank you. That's all from my end. I would like to call upon Sukriti from our public.
Good morning everyone. My name is Sukirti. I am a clinical psychology trainee at Amity University, Gurgaon. My topic is psychiatric illnesses in people with disabilities. Mental health issues for people with special needs starts from the day that they are born, said by Vineet Sarewal, who suffers from visual impairment. Many such examples of people with disabilities suffering from mental health challenges can be seen in India. Centers for Disease and Control Prevention (CDC) highlights that adults with disabilities experience more mental distress than those without disabilities. In 2018, an estimate of 17.4 million adults worldwide with disabilities experienced frequent mental distress. We need to understand that people with disabilities has disability as a part of their life. It does not define all of their life. One of the major roles that plays in a person's life is the society, how we take them and how we treat them. People with disabilities rarely develop mental illnesses due to physical challenges. Rather, it is caused by social and ideological barriers, like making them feel isolated, limiting their choices, opportunities, and all of these can contribute in the risk of depression and suicide in this population. Talking about researcher Turner in 1999 showed that people with disabilities were at the risk of anxiety, depression symptoms, and major depressive disorders than other people. Researcher McLean showed that children with physical challenges were at the increased risk of psychiatric disturbances. Now, even a research done by H. Manesar in 2021 showed that suicide rates and suicidal ideation in this population was increased as a result of isolation, disconnect, and disruption in the routines of this population. Now I would like Himani to put light upon suicidal ideations.
Good morning to one and all present here. My name is Amity and I am an MPhil Clinical Psychology trainee, Part 1 from Amity Institute of Clinical Psychology, Amity University, Haryana. I will be throwing some light on the topic suicide amongst disabled population. So, if we start from the root cause of a suicide, suicide isn't something that happens on one particular, at just one particular time, and it's like, suicide is something that is a result of a very prolonged suffering on a mental level and as well as a physical level. So people with disabilities often do not just stress about the fact that they have a particular physical disability, but they are more stressed about the other factors that contribute to certain mental health issues in their life. For example, various forms of discrimination in society as well as workplace, and then communication barriers, and then further with the isolation and stigmatization they face, the stereotypes that are built around them, and unemployment, and then poverty, and then further coming to barriers in seeking mental health care as well. As a result of which they became more prone to. Hence, we can conclude that the suicide rates in disability in people with disabilities were 4 times more higher than those with non-disabled population. Thank you. Over to next speaker.
afternoon, everyone. My name is Amity and I'm a trainee of MPhil at Amity Institute of Clinical Psychology, Haryana. So my topic is substance abuse in people with disabilities. So disorders due to the substance use and addictive behaviors are mental and behavioral disorders that develop as a result of the use of predominant
changes in their sex life. It also may include social isolation due to the stigma attached with disability as well as mental health that results in feeling alone and isolated, and they're not able to participate in the social activities. Lastly, they also may face identity issues. This can result from disability along with experiencing low self-esteem. So if the person, for example, was always the one who was in charge, independent and taking decisions, so he may feel uncomfortable to seek help from others, ask for help or be dependent. So this may create changes in their identity. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Shinu Chandna. I am pursuing my MPhil in Clinical Psychology from Amity Institute of Clinical Psychology, Amity University, Haryana. Adding on to what everybody has already contributed. So the interventions that can be provided to a disabled person. Whenever we are talking about interventions, the interventions should be always considered multidimensional, interactive, experiential, comprehensive, and as professionals we should always be very much flexible, because in order to ensure that person-centered approach, the intervention selection and prioritization should be developed from the patient assessment and goal setting processes with an evidence-based approach that always considers in the design of any treatment plan. Also, the needs of a disabled person are very individualized and varies from person to person. So the professionals need to be open to exploring new avenues for intervention and to seek creative solutions to the problems with the activity limitation and the participation restrictions, which may involve interventions to address the impairment of body structure and function, but equally may involve interventions to address environmental barriers to function or even to address the personal factors that may interfere with the patients to achieve the life goals that they have set up for themselves. So there are therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, under which there are behavioral therapies and modeling and skills training that can be provided to an individual. Apart from this, there is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which involves the identification and processing of traumatic memories that using bilateral stimulation and desensitization through imaginary exposure to the individuals that can help them replace their cognitively distorted beliefs, like if they think that I'm limited to this particular thing and they're not able to reach their potential along with their disability. So in that context, moving on to relationship-based interventions, it includes like attachment and biobehavioral catch-up, in which there is it specifically deals with the attachment styles, because there can be set of expressed emotions towards the disabled member of the family and how to we can deal with that. Also, there is activity-based therapies that we can do and work on their strengths accordingly to make them to empower them and enhance their own independence, like whatever they can do best to their abilities. Thank you. I would like to invite Ms. Vandana.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vandana. I am a part to MPhil training at Amity Institute of Clinical Psychology at Amity University, Haryana. So my topic is family interventions with disabled population. So as we all know, when we talk about family intervention, so there are certain aspects to it. Aspects like there are a lot of expressed emotions. So when we talk about expressed emotions, so in expressed emotions there are some positive aspects as well as negative. So when we talk about positive, so there is warmth also, there is emotional involvement also, but then there are aspects like critical comments also and violence also. So specifically in disabled population, so there are high chances that there may be critical comments also, there may be violence also. So when we talk about from the point of view of therapy, so how we can initiate it is by psycho-educating the family members as well as the person who is disabled. So there is psycho-education as in making the person aware and also the family members aware why and what is happening in the family situation. So there are therapies related to that. There is cognitive behavior therapy, there is control therapy, but here I am going to be talking about certain exercises that as a clinician one can employ. So an exercise like you can initiate with asking, there is a term called coping question. So coping question is very helpful when we talk about if there has been a very recent diagnosis or a prognosis that is taking place regarding a certain disability. So here, if somebody comes to you with a disability or a family member is finding it really hard to cope up with a particular situation, so there are questions like how have you managed to cope up for so long, or questions like how do you get through the day. So these are certain coping questions that may help either the spouse that is involved in the situation or the family member. Miracle question is wherein again you say you just give a supposition, whereas again you are asking as in questions like suppose a miracle happened tonight causing all of your problems to vanish or go away. So how do you think that is going to impact your life and how your life is going to be? But then there is a disclaimer to it wherein again you have to mention that unfortunately you cannot change the disability that is there in the family or in the person that is there in the family. So this is again a disclaimer that you have to use, and also you have to give a word of caution that you have to be as realistic as possible. So this is another exercise that you can do with the person. And the third one could be wherein again you create a very safe environment, which is again called a safe place or a calm place. It doesn't have to be that safe confines of a room. It could be somewhere outside also. A very valid and evident example is this movie Dear Zindagi, where again this clinician takes the person to the beach. So it could be like that where you and the person they are working together. So creating a safe and a very calm place for the person. And another exercise could be a sand tray exercise, where again it is a visual representation of your internal feelings. So this is very helpful when it comes to if there is a sibling involved in a situation. So siblings, they may not be very vocal or may not be very expressive about their feelings. So, but again, you give a tray filled with sand and tell them to make a visual representation of what they are feeling inside. So it could be something like, just a small example of this could be wherein again a child is, there was an example that I read where a child drew a fairy and there was this another child, and so when asked, so this is again an elder sister talking here, so she said, okay, so this is a fairy angel looking after, and then she mentioned her brother. So again, this is how you can also interpret, and the internal feelings can also come out. And last but not the least, so there is something called relationship check-in, which is again very helpful in where the spouse relations are concerned. So here we can check on the questions like again how they are talking, what they are talking. So you can basically understand the level of intimacy that is there and the communication patterns that are there because of the disability. So the background is again there is some disability or there is something happening in the background, and on the basis of that how it is impacting the family and the spouse marital relationship. So you can understand the level of intimacy, communication patterns, and conflict resolution skills if they are being employed in that relationship, and accordingly you can take it forward and you can move ahead. So these are certain exercises that you can do. Thank you.
Good afternoon everyone, my name is Parnika. I am a Part 2 MPhil Clinical Psychology trainee at Amity University, Haryana. and I will be talking about the classification of disability. So the International Classification of Impairments, Disabilities and Handicaps, which is the ICIDH, was developed in the 1970s by the World Health Organization in 1980 as a tool of classification for the consequences of disability, which was then revised in 2001 as something called International Classification of Functioning, Disability and Health, which is the ICF. And this ICF basically talked about 9 classification systems of disability, which involve communication disabilities in the areas of speaking, listening, seeing, writing. There's personal care disabilities, because a lot of people with disabilities have lack of control over their own bodily systems, self-care systems, which include excretion, personal hygiene, feeding themselves. Then there is locomotor disabilities, which is associated with moving objects and from place to place. There's body disposition disabilities, which involves how the individual basically uses tasks or employs tasks associated with the individual's domicile. Then there's dexterity disabilities, which is basically how does the person regulate activities during the day, how are their manipulative skills. Then there's situational disabilities, which involves dependence and endurance, and environmental disabilities that even Sir talked about. There are particular skill disabilities, which calls for assessment of various combinations of these disabilities. And in India, there are 2 departments that actually collect this disability statistics, which is the National Sample Survey Organization and the Census of India. So based on Census of India, they have adopted about some categories or classifications of disabilities, which was adopted by Kumar in 2015, which has seeing disability, hearing disability, speech, movement. It also includes mental retardation as a separate disability. There's mental illness, which involves any psychiatric illnesses which do not involve mental retardation. And there could also be multiple disabilities, which is 2 or more disabilities in any of these areas. And ideas as an assessment tool was spoken about by one of the speakers, which is used to establish the level of disability. So as psychologists, when we issue certificates of disability, there needs to be at least a 40% level of disability present in the patient for them to avail the government policies in employment and financial support by the government, which basically helps them sustain themselves and live a holistic life. So, and also in addition, in RPWD Act, which was, the 7 disabilities were increased to 21 in this act, and a very, good addition in this act was also including acid attack victims, which were not included in any of the acts before. And acid attack victims, apart from their physical disabilities, have a lot of mental health implications that need to be looked upon by psychologists and even the government when they're employing such individuals. So that is the
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karyasha, and I am MPhil Part 2 Clinical Psychology trainee at Amity Institute of Clinical Psychology, Amity University, Haryana. So today I will be talking about disabled and community services. Services and support for people with disabilities are those government or institutional services and support specifically provided to enable people who have disabilities and who require the support either by law, and some of them are assisted through technologies that have made it easier for the people with disabilities to work in the various organizations like in commercial setups or in educational setups also. There are various services and supports that are available commercially, not only with the people with disabilities, but to everyone who might take and who might want to use them. So the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities in the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment facilitates empowerment of the person with disabilities, who as per 2011 census and it was said that 2.68 crore and out of which 2.21% of the total population of the country were unemployed because of the disabilities. And this includes persons with visual, hearing, speech and locomotive disabilities, intellectual disabilities, mental illness, multiple disabilities and any other mental health related disabilities. And there are various services that are currently run by the Indian government. Like for services of blind and visually impaired, there are accessible mobile apps. These are the new ways to help people with visually impaired people. Many of these apps helps to translate writings into the audio in which the person can listen to the writings. And there are various accessible software applications for smartphones and other mobile devices that can be used by the person who is visually impaired to read the books, newspapers, magazines and other print materials. And these apps convert digital text to speech or provide these visual outputs to the compatible outputs so that they can read it from that digital, hear it from that digital device. There are services for the hearing impairment people. So there are many different services that a hearing impaired and deaf can receive. Hearing aid is a device that a hearing impaired can use in order to hear regular noises or speech. There are different foundations and non-profit organizations that are able to provide hearing aids to the people with hearing loss. And usually people need examination in order to know which kind of hearing aid they need. Then there is speech-to-text services. It is basically the term used for the different real-time captioning devices where speech and auditory information can be translated into the text by a professional STTS, that is speech-to-text services, and it can be used in the different environments such as office meetings, classroom, public speaking events, etc. And there are different types of STTS devices, and it will work depending on its type. Verbatim or meaning to meaning are two types of STT devices. Verbatim is basically the device that translates all the speech in text, including repetitions and misspeaks. This device is known as CARTS, that is Communication Access Real-Time Transcription. Meaning to meaning device is also one of the devices that translate the speech into text, that talking out of repetitions and misspeak. So these are the two type of device that meets this type of secret and type as well, depending on the application that the individual is using and how it works. Apart from that, there are various schemes in India for disabled people that the government of India is running. Some of these schemes are Disha. So basically Disha is an early intervention and school readiness scheme. This is an early intervention and school readiness scheme for the children up to 10 years with disabilities covered under National Trust Act. Second is Vikas Daycare. It is a daycare scheme for the person with autism, intellectual disabilities and multiple disabilities about 10 years of age for enhancing their interpersonal and vocational skills. Third is Samar. Samar is respite care. It is a scheme to provide home for orphans, family in crisis, persons with disabilities from BPL, LIG families with at least one of the 4 disabilities that are covered under National Trust Act. Next is Miranda. It is basically a group home for adults. This scheme provides housing and care services throughout the life of persons with autism, intellectual disabilities and multiple disabilities. The next is Nirmaya. So basically this is the health insurance scheme, and it provides affordable health insurance to the people with multiple disabilities, autism,
and intellectual disabilities. The next is Sahyogi. So Sahyogi is basically a caregiver training scheme. This scheme is set up for the caregiver cells for training and creating skilled workforce of caregivers to care for the person with disabilities and also for their families. Next is Gyan Prabha. So it is an educational support scheme that is to encourage people with autism, intellectual disabilities for pursuing educational and vocational services. There are various other schemes like Sambhav, Prerna. Prerna is basically a marketing assistance scheme which is to create a rival and widespread channel for the sale, production and services that is produced by the person with various mental health disabilities and multiple disabilities. Sambhav is the service which provides the person with disabilities with hearing aids or basically the sources that is required to help them with the disability. And the last scheme is a Bharte Kalam. It is basically an awareness scheme and a community interaction and innovative project that is done by Government of India, and this scheme supports registered organization of the National Trust to carry out activities for increasing the awareness of National Trust disabilities. So these are the some schemes that are currently run by government to help the people with the disabilities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kanak Chumani from MPhil Clinical Psychology Training second year from AICP, AUS. So I will be talking about Right of Persons with Disability Act. So this act was enacted in 2016 and this came in force in 2017. So the act explains the equal opportunities, protection of right and complete involvement of the disabled person. Also in this act, responsibilities are assigned to the central and state government, local corporation and municipalities to provide services and facilities and equal opportunities to disabled persons so that she may also prove himself as productive citizen of the society. So the act earlier it listed 7 disabilities, but this has now increased to 21. So some of them being blindness, low vision, leprosy cured, hearing impairment, locomotor disability, intellectual disability, mental illness, and many more. So some of the aims and objectives of this act are to spell out the responsibility of the state towards the prevention of disability, protection of right, provision of medical care, education, training, employment, and rehabilitation of persons with disability, to create a barrier-free environment, to counteract any situation of abuse and exploitation of the person, to make special provision of integration of person with disability into the social mainstream. Now, there are some main provisions of the Act. So the first one is prevention and early detection of the disability. So this includes undertaking survey, investigation and research concerning the cause of the occurrence of disability. Also promoting various methods of preventing disability and taking measures for prenatal and postnatal care of the mother and the child. The second one is education. So this includes promoting the integration of students with disability in normal schools, promoting setting up of special schools in government and private sector, imparting education through open schools or open universities. Also, there has been now 5% reservation of seats in government institutes of education. And third one is the employment. So earlier there used to be 3% vacancies for person with disability. Now this has increased to 4%. Then coming to non-discrimination. So these are the measures taken such that person with disability can lead a normal life, like adapting rail compartments, buses, vessel and aircraft in a way to permit easy access to such people, engraving surface of zebra crossing for blind people, devise appropriate symbol of disability, provide warning signal at appropriate places, and providing ramps in public buildings, and also providing braille symbols and auditory signals in elevators or the lifts. The fifth one is research and the manpower development. So over here, research in the following areas should be sponsored and promoted, especially for prevention of disability and development of the assistive devices. And second is the financial assistance should be provided to universities and institutions for higher learning. Then sixth, provision is the affirmative action, wherein special schemes are to be notified for the allotment of land at concessional rates for housing, setting up businesses, setting up special recreational centers, establishment of special school or a research center. Then seventh, provision is social security, which includes financial assistance to non-government for rehabilitation of persons with disability, insurance coverage for the benefit of government employees with disability, and unemployment allowances to people with disability. So these were some of the main provisions of the Act. That's it from my side. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. My name is Steffi and I am a student of MPhil Part 2 from Amity Institute of Clinical Psychology, Amity Institute of Haryana. So my topic for today is marriage and disability. So briefly I will be covering about the articles that have been mentioned, that is Article 19 and 23 according to the CRPD. Article 19 explains living independently and being included in the community. So it includes that the person has the right to, be included in the community and to be the resident of the community and decide with whom to live. So he is independent of his rights and have access to wide range of support and services to enable them to live in their choice of the community. So you cannot force a person with disability, that this is the environment or this is the community that you belong to. They have their own rights. And the Article 23 is respect for home and the family. So in this it includes that the person has the right to marry and found a family, and the right to decide freely to have children or not have children. You cannot force people to make their families, and even if they are getting married, to have children. And the right not to be sterilized or prevented from having children by other methods, and the right not to be prevented from exercising the right and the duties as parents. And the last one is that children should not be separated from the parents on the basis of the parent or child disability. So these are the two articles that briefly talks about the rights of the people. Now looking at what is marriage and disability, like while marriage was an expected event in the 19th century, like it's a societal norm that everybody at a certain age has to get married. But people with disability, it was a lot of stigma that these people shouldn't get married because how will they have families in the future? How will they raise their children? So the two factors over here was, one was the physical attractiveness for which they were not allowed to get married, and the another factor was the stigma. And it is said that 12 to 18% of people with disability refuse to get married because of these two factors. And the another thing was the social isolation. It also plays a major role in marriage. Like people usually segregate themselves from the society and do not, associate them with the community. So marriage was one of the major goals of young people in the past, and it has been subject to historical researches. So having a partner and a family still signify the transaction to adulthood and constitute one key to be reorganized as a real man or woman. So historically, knowledge on the lives and the possibility of disabled people is limited, especially regarding the roles as possible partners in marriage. So the one thing that was seen out of the researches was that men it was okay for the men who was disabled to get married because the women would take care of them. So it was seen that the warmth was there and the men would be, cared with. And whereas if the women was disabled, it was looked from the other way around, that who will take care. It is not appropriate for a man to take care of a woman because he has to go out and work. So these are the little things that stigma was attached, and these social roles that are attached with the genders. So the gender also plays a major role in marriage. And then intellectual disability or other type of disability can increase in newly wed vulnerability and may make it more difficult for them to report depression or abuse. So if your partner is disabled and the other one who's a caregiver, there is seen that there could be report of depression or abuse. For some, their care needs may make them dependent on the carers and so reluctant to speak out about the forced marriage or the difficulties encountered once married. So individuals with communication difficulties may even less opportunities to tell anyone outside the family that what is happening to them. So a recent example that I would name, that in the NGO, there was one client who was who has difficulty in speaking. So the partner of that patient took her and left her into the drain, and she was not able to voice out because of the disability. So in such cases, they are not able to voice out their abuse. So for this acts can be beneficiary to voice out and to take care of them. So thank you.
From Amity University, Haryana. My topic for today is psychosocial issues of caregivers for disabled population. So, disability affects the process of personal development and is an experience condition that produces changes in the personal, family, social and cultural levels. Therefore, not only the person with the disability which is affected, but also the environment in which the disabled person resides. And within this, there are caregivers too who develop their own perception of disability based on their own experience. So as a consequence of the disability, the patient suffers a series of physical, cognitive, emotional experiences that affect their functionality and autonomy, which leads to a loss of independence. This also affects their physical, psychological and mental states. However, there are also certain psychological characteristics present in caregivers, for example, self-esteem and resilience, and a number of external factors that may act as protective variables to mitigate the negative effects associated with care. So certain signs of caregiver distress can be a feeling of feeling overwhelmed or being too stressed and worried, feeling very tired, getting too much sleep or not enough sleep, gaining or losing weight, or loss of interest in activities, inability to make time for oneself and their own personal growth and things to do which will improve their mental health also. There is a consistent feeling of sadness. There can also be physiological symptoms in caregivers such as bodily pain because of the exertion of probably moving the disabled person from one place to another, bathing them or like dressing them, making them eat. All of this can have physiological effects on the caregiver. Also, they can engage in alcohol abuse or drug abuse that will affect their health. Certain physical problems associated with caregiving is that there's a lot of investment of time and effort which is put in to take care of the person.
in situation of dependency, which produces a series of problems that affect the physical conditions of the caregivers as well. This is especially true for people who suffer from some type of physical disability, who have lost part of mobility in probably their arms or legs, and need help of another person to carry out their daily tasks. So, two of the studies showed that a large number of musculoskeletal discomfort, which causes problems associated with bone, joints, ligaments, and which can also lead to certain fractures in the person because of certain movements. So for such people, it's very difficult to engage in activities such as bathing, personal hygiene, or even changing their position in the bed, because a lot of time when a patient's position is not changed in the bed, then it can lead to a lot of back sores on their back, which are very painful and which will further lead to their suffering. So things like this that a caregiver has to do to make sure that the person who is suffering is a little more comfortable than they were before. And other conditions which might affect caregivers are also fatigue and tiredness, which is because of their immense role that they have to play as a caregiver. Psychological and mental problems associated with caring. So this includes the psychological and mental states of the caregiver, which were also affected by the patient's demand and their loss of autonomy. So psychological well-being is understood as the development of capabilities and personal growth, where caregivers show favorable indicators of functioning. So here factors influencing the level of psychological well-being includes the means employed to cope with stress affected with the caregiving burden, which means certain coping strategies which are used by caregivers, which might be effective for them or might not be. So it can be positive or negative. Coping strategies, which can be cognitive and behavioral coping, developed to manage external or internal demands, which are considered to exceed the individual's resources. So these strategies are used to reduce the negative impact of stressors on psychological well-being. The use of some coping strategies facilitates adaptation and well-being. They also prevent illness and enable the informal caregiver to adapt to the deterioration of the health of the disabled person. Therefore, it has been seen that caregivers who do not use active coping strategies have a poorer psychological well-being and a poorer evaluation in the care that they are providing. A lot of times it's observed that the caregiver who's supposed to look after the disabled person is not equipped themselves or are not ready to take on this role, because the disability could have been caused suddenly, and the caregiver, which can be a partner or a family member, is not ready for such a big responsibility, but they have no option but to go ahead with it and deal with it and learn step by step. So emotional stress and psychological distress. So the caregiver's stress process is influenced by a number of elements such as primary stressors, which is related to the characteristics of the patient's illness and the task performed. The caregiver's subjective appraisal of these stressors, so whether they think they are equipped enough to handle that kind of a stress, or they think they are not. Along with protective factors, which are the social support and other coping strategies. So if there are more members in the family, so if it's a joint family, a lot of people will be involved in the caregiving of the disabled person rather than just one caregiver. So that can be a positive, it can act as a protective factor, and it's a positive factor which will help everyone to look after each other by taking care of the disabled person. Anxiety and depression. So people who are looking after disabled people are very much known to becoming depressed and having certain mental health issues. So they need to take care of themselves, and a lot of times that is not possible, and they neglect their own well-being and their own health. That can also lead to they themselves falling sick and not being able to take care of the
disabled person further. Then a study conducted by Zalit in 1980 defined the burden associated with caregiving as the degree of damage the caregiver suffers in terms of emotional and physical health, social life, and economic conditions as a result of taking care of family members. So this burden is made up of two components. On one hand, there is a subjective overload, understood as the psychological feelings associated with the fact of caring and specifically the emotional response to the experience. On the other hand, there is objective burden, which refers to the care task that the main caregiver must assume and the difficulty they have to face on a daily basis. So the burden associated with care was the most distressing factor for caregivers. This burden was higher when the disease symptoms were severe and when reciprocity between patient and caregiver was very low. Number of hours of caregiving that is provided. One aspect to be highlighted was that women were more involved in the care of dependent people than men. As a result, women tend to have a higher burden of care and poorer mental and physical health. Both being made and receiving external help in caregiving were positively related to caregiver satisfaction and low caregiving burden. There are also certain strategies for dealing with caregiving stress. First is accepting help. So the help can be in terms of government policies or simply your relatives or family members are trying to give you help. So accepting that help. Focus on what you are able to provide. So being aware of your own capabilities as to how much help you can provide and certain things which are beyond your capabilities. Setting realistic goals. So breaking larger tasks into smaller ones so that you can do it one step at a time. And prioritizing and maybe making lists and developing a routine. Getting connected. This is the ability to find a community with the people and building a community helps the caregiver realize that there are a lot of other people going through the same thing and it will lead to certain sense of well-being in them because they might be more supported if they get involved in a community.
Good afternoon all. I am Shirley Raj, Assistant Professor at Amity Institute of Clinical Psychology, Amity University, Haryana. So on this day we have heard a lot of information about the disabled people and the acts that are there, the therapies or techniques which we can use to make their life better. I would slightly deviate from the topic for some time. So it is very serious already. So, I would like to ask a question to all of you. What is the first thing that comes to your mind, or what is the first feeling that comes, that you feel when you come across a person with disability?
Most of the time it is a feeling of, shall I say, pity. You pity those people that why, oh Bhagwan ne kyun kar diya, ye kyun ho gaya,
Sympathy?
Yeah.
Very true. I think, how many of you agree to this? So I think this is a very raw feeling and it just comes, as a kyun hai. Or maybe the person is suffering. That is the first thing that comes to our mind and we feel sorry for them. But feeling sorry is okay, that is a natural instinct that we have as humans. But I would like to talk about more about what Manesar sir said, attitudinal disability. Let your sympathy not become attitudinal disability later on. For some time it is okay, but I think we should focus more on the empowering, or maybe even after having a disability, this person is able to work. This person is carrying on with day-to-day activities. That is something we should look forward to. And he's not letting that limit his performance or productivity. So I would like to share an experience with you that I had come across. So we
we went for a shopping one day, and what happened, like you go to different sections and you're mostly busy about, choosing clothes and everything. So I was just looking at a section of clothes and I just noticed, I did not directly see the person, but yes, I was calling him and कि भैया ये मुझे ये size की चाहिए, or there are any other pieces or not. I asked, there was no response. So I continued. I thought maybe he's busy with something. I did not look at him. Then I asked again, and then suddenly I looked, why is the person not responding? Then I went beside him and I told him कि भैया इसका है. He gave me that, that I am not able to hear. I'm hearing impaired. So what do you want? So he isharo mein he tried to convey that to me. And for one moment, we feel disgust कि कोई आप पूछे जा रहे हो, कोई reply नहीं करा. That suddenly came down, and I'm like, I should have been more observant. Isn't it? I was so lost that I did not see this person. So many times we do this, knowingly or unknowingly, and sometimes that bias, that pity is shown to the other person, whether the person is pitying himself or not. But we definitely make them feel sometimes by our attitude that you are in a position which should be pitied, or some sympathy should be shown to you, that kind of thing. So I think we should be more sensitive while dealing with such people. Maybe even though initially not sympathize, but I think it is more important that we empathize with them, not sympathize with them. So I think this was one important point that I wanted to make note of. Apart from this, yes, if we talk about the organizations, this happened in Reliance Trends. So Reliance, as she mentioned, was one of the organizations that helped persons with disability. There was another organization, the hospital which I worked for. At a very later point of time, I realized that there are so many persons with disability around us employed. We were not even aware that they are disabled until we came across some situations like that. Like for example, the receptionist, she was not able to walk. There was a nurse, male nurse, who was suffering from bipolar disorder. So one day it happened that he got an attack, and then he started abusing people openly. That's how we got to know that he's suffering from some illness. They were there around us, but we never realized it. And I felt so overwhelmed, especially I feel overwhelmed for the organizations who do not only think about their profits and, even if they are thinking and in the process they are doing a benefit to such people. I think hats off to that attitude itself is something which should be praised. Okay. So we were talking about the disabilities, right? Shivam spoke about ideas. Now Shivam, can you tell me what are the disabilities that we can use ideas for, or can it be used for all disabilities, all mental disorders?
It basically talks about the visual impairments, locomotors issues.
Yes, but I'm not talking about physical disabilities. There is a section which includes mental illness. What are the disorders covered under mental illness, or are all disorders covered under mental illness? What are the disorders covered under mental illness? As a clinical psychologist, I think this is the important part for us, because physical disabilities में आप certify नहीं करोगे, but there might be a time where you would be asked to certify for mental disorders. So you should know which disorders I should be looking at. Okay. As far as I know, it is you have schizophrenia, you have dementia, you have OCD, you have bipolar disorder. Okay. And other disorders are not covered, which may be added. I think we all should, because impairment happens in all. Even in severe depression, a person
level of impairment is still there, may not be able to function. So other disorders should also be covered. I think we should look forward to that. And apart from that, one more point that I wanted to put across is that the benefits which people can avail is for the people who have benchmark disability. What is benchmark disability? 40%. What about the people who are lower than that? And I'm not saying that they should get the complete benefits, but yes, they must have selfish thinking, but at least some benefits should be there for such people. That is what I think. And so basically, I personally feel, I would just like to conclude by saying that people with disability do inspire us in many ways also. When we come to work, some days we are not well, or maybe we are injured, we have a severe headache, we are not able to be as productive as we can. But just imagine that there is a limitation with them all the time. And yet they are working, they are fulfilling their goals, and yet they are able to contribute to their organization. Right? So that is something which we can learn. There is one person who has inspired, I think, Stephen Hawking. I have followed him and I like him because he has inspired me a lot personally. Going through his story, the doctor said that you have only 11 months, but yet he did not stop, and he lived for many years after that. Okay, so that is a big thing, that is a huge victory. So I would just like to conclude by saying that being challenged is inevitable, but being defeated is optional.
Hello everyone, my name is Meenakshi. I am working as assistant professor at Amity University in the department of AICP. So today we all are celebrating World Disability Day. So first of all, as we all know that now we use the term as differently abled instead of disabled, right? So the term itself is giving a sense of empowerment for the individual. So it is very necessary how we are going to choose our words. So right, that is one part. अगर हम disability की बात करें तो I think there are a lot of टॉपिक्स जिसके ऊपर बात की जा सकती है, जिसके ऊपर हमें सॉल्यूशंस की ज़रूरत है, राइट? अगर हम बात करें एजुकेशनल सेक्टर की, हेल्थ सेक्टर की, फैमिली सपोर्ट सिस्टम की, एजुकेशन की, इन एवरी सेक्टर देयर आर लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स जहाँ पर हमें, मुझे लगता है कि बहुत ज़्यादा काम करने की ज़रूरत है. वी आर लैगिंग बिहाइंड, राइट? अगेन कौन कौन सी चीज़ें हैं जो और चैलेंजिंग बनाती हैं एक डिफरेंटली एबल्ड पर्सन को? दैट इज़ योर इन्वायरमेंट, योर एटीट्यूड, राइट? So, सब बात कर रहे हैं, in general, what is the challenges for the disabled person या differently abled person, right? अगर हम बात करें कुछ पॉइंट्स यहाँ पर जो मैं मेंशन करना चाहूँगी, बहुत कम टाइम है तो बहुत शॉर्ट में मेंशन करूँगी, ठीक है? फर्स्टली अगर आप बात करोगे एटीट्यूड्स की, इट्स नॉट ओनली यू as a person, as a society, that we are carrying a different attitude for them, but even among themselves. They discriminate each other on the basis of the percentage of disability. So I got one case. She was having hearing disability around 90%, right? So she was telling me that even in their group, they discriminate based on their type of disability, based on their percentage, right? So if a person is having less disability, they are more acceptable within the society. तो वो लोग जो है ज़्यादा empowered रहते हैं as compared to people जो कि profound level पर है या severe level पे. तो first point, because it is the theme is that transformative solutions. So I think this is one point where we have to think about and we have to work, right? Apart from this, I would like to say that what can be the, when we are talking about the solutions, so I would like to give my points on the solution more. So as per the UN convention that we are saying that leave no one behind. So that is the motto and that is the goal for 2030 by the government, right? So one thing which is in the solution we can think about to empower such people is that the role of technology, which is very important, right? अगर हम अपनी भी बात करें तो आज की डेट में टेक्नोलॉजी इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर अस. हम एक छोटी सी डिवाइस है लाइक मोबाइल, उसको हम कितने डिफरेंट तरीके से यूज कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज हमें जरूरत नहीं है सिंपैथी एम्पैथी या कुछ भी दिखाने की. वी हैव टू प्रोवाइड द सॉल्यूशन टू देम, राइट? वी feel fearful, we don't want this because we don't know how to deal with this. That is the most challenging thing which a person with differently able feel, or with anyone. ठीक है, आपके पास भी जब तक आप नॉर्मल होते हैं तब तक हमें सब कुछ ठीक लगता है, but the moment we feel that we are different from the group, so we started to feel, having a sense of less self-esteem. So how we have to enhance? We have to provide the solution. How we can provide the solution? By education, by occupation, right? So one thing is that the role of technology, which is very important. जैसे कि मैम ने बोला, सर ने बोला, ब्रेल. अगर हम बात करें आज के, अभी परसों इलेक्शन थे, ठीक है, पोलिंग की बात करें, राइट उनके पास है, आप वोट कर सकते हो, ठीक है, बट स्टिल अगर आप एक विजुअली इम्पेयर्ड इंडिविजुअल की बात करें तो उसके पास असेसिबिलिटी नहीं है कि वो किस पॉइंट को दबा रहा है. स्टिल दैट पर्सन नीड द असिस्टेंट. एंड वहां पर जो आपकी एक प्राइवेसी होती है कि आप किसको वोट देना चाहते हो, आपकी खत्म हो गई, राइट? So we need to bring that changes in our society. We have to work on that. ठीक है. The second point is that definitely जो भी एक बारी disability हो गई, it's a long term. We know that we have to work on the rehabilitation part for that individual. But हम attitude की बात करते हैं कि हमें attitude change लेकर आना है. अगर हम सोचे तो कहाँ से लेकर आएंगे? स्कूल मेंटल हेल्थ प्रोग्राम गवर्नमेंट ने नया स्टार्ट किया, राइट? तो क्या क्या कॉम्पोनेंट्स है स्कूल मेंटल हेल्थ प्रोग्राम के, एंड साथ में हम from the very beginning how we can train a child to give a particular attitude with a person who is having differently abled condition, right? तो वहां से हम innovation की और inclusion की बात करेंगे, वहां से changes लाने की जरूरत है. बड़े होकर के आप changes लेकर आओगे, that is one part, but हमें अपनी society को transform करना है. तो स्कूल मेंटल हेल्थ प्रोग्राम जो हमारे चल रहे हैं वहां पर हमें एक बहुत ज्यादा जरूरत है काम करने की. The second thing which government is working is community based rehabilitation, right? So community-based rehabilitation is the purpose is that to make the person aware about the situations. ठीक है, वहाँ पर हम प्रोफेशनल्स को प्रोफेशनल्स को जो है हम ट्रेन करते हैं और उनको हम एक सर्वे की तरह, अवेयरनेस प्रोग्राम की तरह, या फिर जो लेडीज प्रेग्नेंट हैं या मैटर्निटी में हैं उनको किस तरीके से अर्ली साइंस एंड सिम्टम्स समझा सकते हैं, उसके ऊपर हम बात करते हैं. तो दीज आर वेरी गुड स्ट्रैटेजीज जो कि गवर्नमेंट ले रही है ऑलरेडी, एंड हमें और ज्यादा इसके अंदर इंक्लूड करने की चीजों को जरूरत है. I think that is what exactly I want to say. So we have a lot of things. Just the focus should be that it is a resource for us, because अगर हम बात करें फैमिली से लेकर के, the smallest unit of the society is family. फैमिली से लेकर के हम स्टेट, इंडिया, वर्ल्ड की बात करें तो ऑल रन्स अराउंड द इकोनॉमी, राइट? तो जहां पर आपकी इकोनॉमिकल वैल्यू बढ़ जाती है वहां पर आपकी बाकी सारी चीजें एनहांस हो जाएंगी. तो एज पर द स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ द इंडिविजुअल वी हैव टू प्रोवाइड द ऑक्यूपेशन टू द इंडिविजुअल. आई थिंक दैट इज ऑल फ्रॉम माय साइड. थैंक यू.
Yes, sir.
I first like to acknowledge the time the Citizen Hospital has given to us for conducting this program, for which I am extremely grateful. While listening to what you guys were saying, I was thinking about myself and about many human beings that exist on earth. I just want to do one activity for all of us. I just command you, request you do one thing. Do that, then I'll come back to my point. Please, all of you, including myself, raise your right hand. Raise your right hand. Now, I will again say raise your right hand, but you do not raise your right hand, please. Raise your right hand. Right. So I will start from here. I will take maximum 5 to 6 minutes. One thing that Dr. Mahfouz is talking about, and Madam has talked about attitude, I think it is something that needs, that is the focus of training. And second thing is, disability empowerment, as Nada was talking about, we need to empower people who have real disabilities. So I'll come to the point of disability that we all have in ourselves. What is that disability? I am a disabled person. I am saying on camera, I am a disabled person. Because disability is seen from one of the perspectives that is perceived from, that is also counted from a model of outcome. Model of outcome. Okay? How I am able to provide something to someone, or how I am contributing for myself, or how I am contributing to others. This is a very important marker of disability, So we assume that people who are having disabilities may not be able to provide contribute to outcomes. Therefore, government says, थोड़ा सा इनको फाइनेंशियल बेनिफिट दे दीजिए, क्योंकि अपने लिए भी इतना कंट्रीब्यूट नहीं कर सकते, and they may not be able to contribute to others. Right? That is a model. So now I am coming to the point of disability that I have. I said to you, raise your hand, right? I raise my hand, right? In the second portion, I said, raise your hand, and I also instructed all of you, requested all of you not to raise your hand, right? And you followed that. I think most of us belong to the second category. Means that we have the ability to do things. Despite having the ability, we are not performing those tasks. Okay? So I'm thinking that we should write to Disability Federation that what name we can give to such people. For instance, I am in Amity University, right? I am using the resource of Amity University, but I am not contributing what I am supposed to contribute. I have the cognitive abilities, I have the ability to speak, to see, to think, to guide, to supervise, to teach. Or you guys to learn many things from all of us, to contribute. But still the contribution part is the same, based on what ability you have. So I think this is a challenge for the world. People are not thinking that this disabled person के लिए हम क्या करेंगे, उसका विजन कितना है. My concern ये है कि जिनके पास जो सलाहियतें हैं, क्षमताएं हैं, उन क्षमताओं का इस्तेमाल वो क्यों नहीं करते. And I think from that perspective, we all are disabled in the real sense. क्षमता है देखने की, लेकिन हम देख नहीं रहे. We are not able to see from here. I can see from my eyes, but I may not be able to see from my brain, from my this thing. Okay, I think this is the real disability that we all carry within ourselves that needs rectification, and that comes from positive psychology. When we are not focusing on our strength and how we are using our strength for human benefit, or for my own benefit, or for the benefit for trainees, or for when trainees do not use their resources, we all fall in the same boat, disabled individuals. So I think we should not call people who are described by LPW Act as disabled. We all fall somewhere in that category. Why? Because we are not contributing based on what I have, what resources I have. That is the work that we all need to do. And the message is, we are able individuals, but we are not able to use those resources because of what Dr. Mahfouz was saying, attitude. Because we are not built ourselves from a contribution perspective. We are just sucking, something. हम suck कर रहे हैं लोगों को, हम लोगों को provide नहीं कर रहे हैं. And therefore, we have to build this model of providing nurturance, providing something for the world, providing something for ourselves and for society. Only then we can say that I am not a disabled individual. Till we do that, we will continue to fall. I believe, strongly believe in the disabled category. So let us build the environment wherein we start building, using our resources so that we can contribute better to this world. Thank you.
And the topic is very interesting. The theme is very interesting. Transformative solutions for inclusive development. Now, Dr. Mahfouz has mentioned, you mentioned about attitude, the right attitude. So there's a saying, and you mentioned about disability. Everyone, all of us are disabled in that sense that we are not able to tap the potential the way we need to, the way we should. So there's a saying, two men looked out from the prison bars. One saw the mud, the other saw stars. So it's the attitude, it's the perspective, isn't it? And then there's another perspective. I had blues because I had no shoes. I had blues because I had no shoes. Till upon the street, I met a man who had no feet. So again a perspective shift, and it empowers me, it enables me, from a disability mindset to ability mindset. It's my perspective. And this same dose of optimism, the attitude and the way you have mentioned disability, that we have to make ourselves able. And the more we empower ourselves, we'll be able to give, inject that dose of optimism to others also. Just now I was meeting a person, a patient just now. Along with that, he's 42 years old. And with a very sulky face, I asked him, have you brought your parents? He said, हाँ, आपने बोला था ना इसलिए मैं लेकर आया. So anxiety issues and other things he has, depression issues, and his parents were also there. So when we are talking in terms of even management of disability, what we focus here is, and we discuss all the time, is family therapy. The caregivers, the carers who are involved in management of so-called technical on a clinical disability at home. So their mental health is also very important. We have to make them able so that they can manage the disability in the family to the best of their ability. So we have to enable them. So in that sense, the disability is there, but we have to enable. So we are acting as, catalyst to make them enablers. So as therapists, lots of, hats we need to wear. And the best thing is, Nij par shasan, fir anushasan. Self-empowerment, jitna zyada hoga, the more I love myself, the more I am confident about myself, I'll be able to inject that dose in with the people I interact with, whether it's my team or the patients or the clients or even out there. We're not only talking in terms of clinical setting. We're talking about everyone in the society, and especially these days in the corporate, people are really, really disabled in the in that sense. Stress, anxiety, depression, sad is such a very common phenomenon these days. So the message which I would like to give you today is Nij par shasan, fir anushasan. So from information we transform ourselves. So information is fine. Today we spoke about, you people spoke on various topics related to disability. It was all knowledge, important. KT, knowledge transfer, very important. Right? But all this knowledge we have to apply as skill. All of us are budding mental health professionals, and we transform ourselves. So from information to transformation, and we are able to manage the disability. We are able to enable ourselves not to be disabled in the sense Dr. Mahfouz spoke about. Right? So thank you for today.
End of this program. So before the program ends, let me just share very vibrant news in UP just a few days back. Few days back there was a vibrant news in UP and that was regarding the marriage of Salim Bhai. Vaidya knows that. Salim Bhai, he was, I think, 2 feet, 2.5 feet or 3 feet height. तो उनकी जो शादी है उसका इशू चल रहा था लगभग 2 साल से अंदाजन, and just a couple of weeks back he got married. मैरिज पूरा जैसे होती है, मतलब पूरी सेरेमनी इसमें होती है, मतलब जो मुसलमानों में होता है कि वलीमा भी होगा, वलीमा मतलब रिसेप्शन, इजंट सो, और बारात जाएगी तो उनकी कार में बारात की जैसे जाती है, इजंट सो, तो दैट, और जो जिनसे शादी हुई उनकी भी शायद लगभग उतनी ही हाइट थी, 2.5 feet और 3 feet लाइक दैट, फाइन। तो जब उनके रिश्ते का वो चल रहा था, देयर वाज इशू के ये कैसे शादी हो सकती है, बट ही वाज एडमेंट, वो पुलिस में पहुंचे कि मुझे शादी करनी है, isn't so? After that there was some local leaders who intervened, and after that the marriage that was materialized and it happened. Here, while I mention this, that is that yes, the society that should understood, but at the same time, the confidence building among the disabled, that should have also been. Yes, we have cited certain examples that they have done this, they have done that, and they have done that, but they are very few. A large population among disabled, they carry very poor self-confidence. They carry very poor self-confidence, and therefore they are not able to excel themselves. As we belong to the fraternity of psychology, so the disability or ability, first that lies in the mind. And after that, in your rest part of the body. Once, when you think that I am disabled, then you are disabled. Then you function like disabled. And by the mind, when you think that I can function, I can do like able, then you are able. That functional disability does not only lie among those who are carrying some kind of disability. That disability also lies, functional disability, among those who don't carry any physical disability. Fine. Before in the beginning, as I mentioned certain examples in Olympics also, that they were disabled, they got to disability, but they keep on working and they got the gold medal in that. What was the difference between those who work upon their disability and who just think that I am disabled and that's why I cannot do this or that or that? That is only because they thought from their mind that I can work upon, I can overcome to my restrictions. Fine. So here, as we are well equipped from the tools and the techniques, so wherever we can do, so we'll have to work upon removing this, mental disability from the people. Those who are carrying either that is of the limb or that is of the vision. I just give a few examples. Music, कितना मुश्किल होता है कि जो विजुअली वेल इक्विप्ड हैं, उनके लिए भी म्यूजिक को हैंडल करना मुश्किल होता है। बट देयर वाज अ म्यूजिशियन, मेरे ख्याल से शायद कुछ लोगों ने नाम सुना हो या नहीं सुना हो, रविंदर जैन। रविंदर जैन राज कपूर की कई फिल्मों का जो संगीत था वो उन्होंने दिया था, एंड ही वाज कंप्लीटली ब्लाइंड। हिट म्यूजिक।
So here I would like to add our Paralympians, and Bhavna Patel is the first Indian in tennis.
There is a long history of the Olympians. There is a long history. There is a long history of the warriors. And then so they got disabled. But even then, you know, in the history, their name that is visible even after they got the disability. There was a business tycoon. He was killed a few years back. क्या नाम था उसका? पोंटी चड्ढा। पोंटी चड्ढा जिसे लोकल लैंग्वेज में कहते हैं लूला। लूला मतलब जिसका एक हाथ खराब हो गया होता है। लोकल लैंग्वेज को लूला कहते हैं। लंगड़ा मतलब जिसका पैर खराब, और लूला जो जिसका हैंड खराब। तो उसका एक हाथ खराब था, लेकिन इन जस्ट शॉर्ट स्पैन ऑफ टाइम वो बिजनेस के फील्ड में ही वाज एट द टॉप। You can consider at the top. यही छतरपुर में उसकी डेथ हुई थी। Anyway.
He got murdered, sir.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful saying, sir, which says, "Where there is a will, there is a way, and where there is no will, there are a lot of alibis we can keep on making."
Yes. Yeah. And so there is a need to make the confidence building among those. So we'll have to move with that. So we can conclude this program by few important things, and that is that here we have conducted many programs, and this is one of them. And Dr. Swati, who is the whole soul owner of the hospital, she always provided the support, constant support from every aspect. Dr. Amity, she was already every time she is facilitating any of the program and sharing her views. Today, Ashima Madam, Archita provided very important support. और हमारे स्टाफ के सुरेश भैया, उनकी जो कॉफी होती है वो इतनी बढ़िया होती है कि वो ज्यादा काम करने का मन करता है। Fine. Apart from rest of the staff also, that is also Sunil ji or Madam Shamundra Madam, they are also very supportive, so we are thankful to them. Today, Srishti Madam shared her important views. Meenakshi Madam shared her experiences and throw upon a light on this very important aspect. And in this program, there is a very dynamic role that has been played by Dr. Nadeem, that he channelized, maximized this program, and God prepared this beautiful banner, and which is you say that adding to the beauty of the program. And very important, none of the program can be successful without the participation of our participants, our infiltrators. And you all are actively contributed, prepared, and took this task seriously. And this increased our confidence and motivate us to do other programs in the future. So with these words, thanks a lot, and you can have lunch after you finish. Thank you.